All right, hello everyone, and welcome to today's session on crafting persuasive sales copy. A quick disclaimer, this session is a pre-recorded webinar. So the great thing is you can pause at any time, you won't miss out on anything. And if you have any questions at any time, please don't hesitate to wait. Feel free to shoot me an email at chin, CHIN, at classynarwhal.com. That's CLASSYNARWHAL.com. Or you can connect with me on LinkedIn as well, and I'll put my profile up in a second. But for today's workshop, we'll start with a quick intro on myself, just to give you an understanding of my perspective on the topic, and then we'll dive right into the presentation, and we will wrap up with some additional info if you're interested in learning about how to work with me. So like I mentioned, my name is Chin. This is the full name, and you can look me up by this name on LinkedIn as well. I come from a background of entrepreneurship and sales. I spent the first 5 years right after graduation working in corporate sales for telecommunications companies here in Canada, including Bell and Freedom Mobile. The last 5 years, right before I'm doing what I'm doing right now, I was working for a startup social venture incubator accelerator. And what I was doing there is basically I'm a startup consultant, I'm a business consultant. And I was working with entrepreneurs that were starting new projects, new businesses from the idea level. And I helped them with validating the ideas, help them with product market fit, help them with understanding how to raise capital from investors and how to eventually grow and scale their businesses. So over that time, I've worked with probably close to 400 companies. So I think with today's session, I hope to bring the best of both of that, but both the best practices you see in corporations, but also the innovation and creativity that you see in startups. Currently, I run this company called Classy Narwhal. Classy Narwhal's mission is to evolve education to incorporate more elements around soft skills and personal awareness, helping people understand, their personal mission, their values, how to do things like build their network, negotiate. So yeah, that's basically what I do, and that's my background. So a lot of the presentation that you will see today will come from the business perspective, but it will also, a lot of the concepts that I talk about when I speak about persuasive writing will apply to almost anything that you try to do when it comes to convincing someone else on something. It might be maybe convincing your spouse to go hiking with you. It might be getting a friend to come to a party, getting an investor to invest in your company, getting someone to hire you. All of these practices should apply to that as well. So make sure that you take whatever you feel is appropriate and customize it based on your needs. So some key outcomes. Today we will be focusing on two main things. Number one is copywriting, and then number two is we'll dive into some examples and do some case studies. On copywriting, we will touch on relatability. So how do you get people to relate with you? Number two, getting them on your side. Number three, using pain versus pleasure. Number four, reducing risk. And then number five, getting them to understand different realizations that they have to go through, which is the concept of gradualization. So what is copywriting? For those of you who are not familiar with copywriting is basically salesmanship in print. If you think about sales, you typically think about verbal persuasion. Copywriting is everything that is in text. And I want to emphasize here, a lot of people think about copywriting as fake, clever lines, using manipulative wording. It's not about that. Good copy is basically language that is persuasive. It speaks to buyer's psychology, and it requires that you really understand and know your customer inside and out. Copy lives everywhere. Like I mentioned, it could be what you say in a conversation, and these could be in the form of the scripts that you use. It could be what you say in a video, let's say a radio or video ad. It could be what you put on your website. It could be the emails that you craft. It could be your event descriptions. It could be your outreach messages on LinkedIn. All of this fall under the category of copy. It's basically any text that is trying to persuade someone to do something. So let's talk about copy. The first tip that I mentioned is building relatability. The biggest mistake that a lot of companies make, or a lot of people make when they're writing copy, is that they don't call out their target customer. They don't do this because they're often worried that by identifying a specific target customer, what happens is that they will ostracize other customers who don't see themselves as that persona. For example, if you have let's say a platform where you help companies with sales consulting, and if you say that you help food and beverage companies, then you are worried that maybe your service can also benefit product companies, but because you're focusing on food and beverage, then product companies will not actually buy a product or service. So number one tip here is when you write copy, you actually want to try to have multiple copies depending on who you're trying to address. And you want to target that copy to the right audience so that people will really relate to it. So I'll show you a quick example here. So this is a company, it's a scheduling company called Booked In. And you can see they have a generic website, pain-free online appointment scheduling app. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, they have different landing pages depending on who you are. So if you are a tattoo shop, they will say spend less time on your phone, more time on your art, right? And then the image is also of a tattoo artist. If you are a personal trainer, they will say spend less time at the gym. Spend more time at the gym and less time at your desk. And then you see the image, again, it's related to personal trainers. So they're actually effectively doing specific landing pages and targeting their audiences through ads. So when the personal trainer visits your website, they feel that this product is designed specifically for them, right? So think about how you can do that. Craft multiple copies. Another video I want to show you is the Apple Think Different video. So Apple has done an amazing job, phenomenal job when it comes to building themselves up as a brand and really identify.
Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. While some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
All right, so let's break that down. If you notice in that video, there was nothing about any of their products at all. So it's such a timeless video. That was one of the most effective Super Bowl videos, and all it does is really call out the target customer. And even if you don't associate yourself as a creative, you'll notice they focus, this is for the crazy ones, the people who stand out, the people who are different, right? Think different, that was their campaign. It was about people who are geniuses. And even if you don't feel like you're one of those, you want to become one of those. So they are creating a persona that people can aspire towards. So that's the idea behind calling out your customer. You want to make people relate to whatever you're doing. So it's clear who is it for. Another thing that you want to use is you want to use language that customers relate with, or whoever you're trying to persuade relates with. So for example, there's this one company that we saw, they were running social media training programs, and they said it's social media training programs for freelancers. And just by changing the word freelancers to digital nomads, we run social media training programs for digital nomads. They saw a big increase in conversion. I think it was something like 67%. So small things like that actually make a big difference. So think about how can you use the language the customer uses and really build a persona that they can aspire towards. Tip number 2, make them feel special. And how you do this is you do this by doing one of these 3 things. So you can make them feel like they're a part of something that's bigger than themselves. They want to feel like they belong in a community. You can make them feel like they're part of a cause or a movement. One great example here, and let me pull that up as well, is this company which we work with at Spring. It's called Nada Grocery. So Brienne, when she founded the company, it's basically a company that it's a grocery store that has no packaging. And this concept has been done before in different countries, but she wasn't sure if Vancouver was ready for it. So we said, hey, why don't you test out to see if there's a big enough audience that cares about reducing their environmental footprint. And we said, why don't you start a Facebook group around that? So she started the Zero Waste Vancouver community group. And you can see it's close to 11,000 members right now, and it's growing. It's a very active group. It's organic. It's not about the company. So don't create a company page. No one cares about your brand. But if you create a page that is centered around a cause, a movement, a community, people care about that. And this community has been monumental when it comes to building her audience and getting her company up and running. So think about that movement or community, or that something that's bigger than them. Polarization is another effective strategy. So Donald Trump, you can see he uses polarization very heavily. Probably he's not the best example, but the idea over here is that if you take a stance on a specific topic and there is an opposing view, you will naturally attract people who share the same beliefs that you do. So your idea is you want to polarize on a topic, and if your audience shares the same beliefs that you do, you can attract them. And then the third tip is identifying a common enemy. So when you identify a common enemy, yes, you can name specific competitors if you want, but if you do, be prepared for some blowback because they will try to defend themselves as well. So I want to give you another video to take a look at. This is the ClickFunnels program or website that Russell Brunson has.
To get started, and we don't even have goals to go public either. In fact, our motivation is the exact opposite. You see, we have products and services and things that we know change people's lives. But because we're fighting against the big brands, people with literally unlimited budgets, we have to do things differently. We have to do things smarter. We don't have financial safety nets because every test we take is with our own money. We have to be profitable from day number one. So how do we do that? How is that even possible? If you ask the MBAs or look in your college textbooks, they will tell you that what we are doing is impossible, yet it's happening every single day. And it's happening through an art and a science that we call funnel hacking. It's not really.
All right, so let's break that down again. I started the video in the middle, but what actually happens here is Russell Brunson is calling out the we language that he's using. Is he's identifying himself as an entrepreneur, as someone who is starting something small, right? So you can see he's talking about we don't rely on venture capitalists. We are bootstrapping. We are from the ground up. We are not like the big brands. We don't have big budgets. So again, that's another common enemy, big brands. He's not naming any specific company. If you ask the MBA graduates, they would say it's impossible. So, polarizing and trying to show that these entrepreneurs are different from people who have traditional education. And then again, college textbooks, right? Kind of identifying traditional institution. So what is the common enemy that you can use to help your customer understand the position that you take? So these are some key things that you can use in order to get them on your side of the fence. And you see, like Russell Brunson does it a really good way. He talks about like he is a part of that as well. It's not just you are, I am as well, right? Tip number 3, pain versus pleasure. A lot of companies tend to avoid negative language quite naturally because they worry that it will make them look negative or seem depressing. But if you really think about it, negative language is the most effective language to get people to relate to you because positive benefits tend to be different for different people. So one example is making money or making more revenue. So if you run a program, let's say a sales consulting program, and you serve, let's say, entrepreneurs or business owners, making more revenue could mean one thing for one person. Making revenue could mean freedom, the freedom to do new things, try new experiments, run new programs, have more products. It could mean security to guarantee payroll for your employees, security to pay yourself, right? So benefits can be different for different people depending on their values. But if you talk about the pain of not having revenue or not having sufficient revenue is common regardless of who you are. If you don't have enough money, you don't have a financially sustainable business, you can't continue to do what you do, right? You can't serve your customers, you can't pay your employees. So pain is more relatable. And if you still don't believe me, just reflect. When you hang out with your friends, what do people talk about? People more commonly complain about their day, their boss, how terrible things went, rather than talk about what they aspire towards, their dreams, or their kind of vision. Tip number 4, make it impossible to say no. So over here, I'm not talking about brainwashing or manipulating people, but the idea is there are 2 key things. So number 1 is you want to reduce risk. And I want to quickly introduce a concept in biopsychology. It's known as the decision threshold. So the way to picture this is there's a balancing beam. And in the decision threshold, there are 2 sides of the equation. One is what is the cost of staying the same? And the other is what is the cost of changing? So cost of staying the same include maybe I'm losing out on some opportunity, I'm wasting a lot of time, maybe there's some risk, there are some penalties. And then the cost of changing include, of course, the price of your product, maybe the learning curve, adoption, how can I convince the rest of my team to use it? So there's maybe some change management involved. So people will make a change when the cost of changing is lower than the cost of staying the same. So this is the cost of staying the same, and this is the cost of changing. And what happens is when it makes more sense to change, people will change. So what you're trying to do is you want to reduce that risk. You want to reduce the cost of changing. So how can you do that? You can include guarantees, you can include promises, and that will even, if you want to go so far as to actually take on some of the risk yourself. So you see this with product companies where they say, let's say a mattress company. I've seen mattress companies where they say, try out our product. If you don't like it within 120 days, you can return it, no questions asked, full refund, right? We even pay for shipping. So they're taking on the risk because that product, if returned, cannot be sold again because people have slept on the bed. But don't worry too much about people abusing it. That's one question you might be thinking. The key goal is most people will not abuse it, and this will help facilitate people to actually use your product or service. Of course, only do this if you believe in the quality of your product. If your product or service is not up to par yet, then don't include some of these guarantees if you can't promise it. The second tip is overcoming objections before they arise. Objections don't exist if you've already addressed them. So if you know that a common objection is pricing, you might want to talk about pricing somewhere in the conversation. It might be in an email, it might be in your demo call, it might be on your website, right? So you can say, we know that a common challenge that a lot of entrepreneurs have because they don't have money is pricing. Therefore, we offer a payment plan, right? So you can address some of these things earlier on in the conversation so that they won't come up when you try to close a customer. Gradualization is the last and final tip. The gradualization concept here that I want to really nail home is that it's not a single one-time interaction. Copy doesn't have to be in one place. Copy can be in multiple places, right? A question that I often get is, how should I know if my landing page or website is too wordy, too text heavy? My comment here is you want to break it down. Not everyone's going to look at your website and convert right away. You want to have different points depending on where people are in the journey. So some copy might be in an email, some copy might be in your call script, some copy might be in your program page. And the idea here is gradualization. I'm not trying to say that you shouldn't try to close a customer, you shouldn't try to shorten your sales cycle, but what I'm trying to say is that you need to ensure that you touch people and speak to them where they are at. So what are the series of realizations that people have to go through in order to buy or be convinced on your point of view? So let's look at this example here. This example is for a social media training program. So for example, they first need to believe that what they're doing right now is not working. They need to believe that there's a better way of getting leads and making sales. Then they need to believe that they can make 6 to 7 figures a year, and they do it by building a brand. Then they need to believe that social media is the best option for building a brand. Then they need to believe that this social media program is better than any other competitor solution out there. And then they need to believe that they need to take this program and enroll right now. So this is one example of a series of realizations. This does not all happen all at one go in one time and place. You could have different copy at different places. Maybe the top might be a blog post to help them understand that they're getting stuck, they're not growing their business. And then you can see in the middle, helping them understand how to do social media, how to build a brand. And then towards the end, maybe it's a landing page, maybe it's a demo call to help them understand, the competitors and why it makes sense to actually start the program now. So I hope you kind of understand the concept here. It's not about manipulation, but it's about addressing people where they are at. So let's take some quick time to do an exercise. And what I want you to do is take some time, reflect on what are the series of realizations that your customer needs to go through. And not only customer, whoever you're trying to convince. If you're trying to get your spouse to go hiking with you, if you want to get your friends to go to a party, what are the series of realizations that they have to go through in order to come to your side? All right, welcome back. I hope you've taken the time to actually pause the video to do the exercise. If not, do so right now, but we will move on. So I want to jump and give you some examples of copy in action. And I'll talk about one of the programs that I built at Spring. So at Spring, we had this fundraising training program. We would help and guide entrepreneurs on the process around how to raise a round of funding from investors, how to structure their round, how to value their company, how to find investors, how to negotiate, things like that. So here is the series of realizations that they would have to go through. This is the gradualization exercise that we just went through. So entrepreneurs first need to realize that they need to scale. They need to realize then that funding is how they will, what will help them scale. Then they need to realize that they don't know anything about fundraising. Then they need to realize that Spring is an expert at fundraising. And then they need to realize that they need to start the process early to succeed. And then they need to realize that this program will save them time and money. So I'll show you the blog post that I created for them, but there is a whole bunch of different tools, channels that I've been using. So let's dive into it. And then I'll go back to the blog post. So top of funnel. Top of funnel here is, like I mentioned, people first need to realize that they need to scale and that fundraising will help them, right? So over here, we are doing things like blogs, articles, ads, meetups, email drip campaigns, and all of these topics here are designed around how do you know if your company is stuck? How do you know if your competitors are pulling ahead of you? How do you pivot your company appropriately? How do you adjust your company to position yourself to be better than your competitors? So these are the kind of topics that I'm addressing. And then what I'm doing, of course, is I'm trying to capture their info as they come across my content. I might ask them to register for a webinar, get their email. I might try to give them a lead magnet. So for those of you who are not familiar with it, with a lead magnet, it might be something like, put in your email so that you can download this guide or download this template. I'm tracking if they're clicking through my emails and opening and going to visit a blog, right? And yeah, having landing pages to register for webinars or events. Mid-funnel, I'm going to quickly scroll back. What I'm trying to do here is 3 and 4. I'm trying to get people to realize that fundraising is a much bigger topic than they think it is, and I want to position Spring as the expert. So what I'm doing here is I'm running workshops, I'm doing webinars, we are doing discovery calls, strategy calls with people, and the idea here is we are helping them understand the difference between bootstrapping, which is basically how you grow your company through revenue, versus fundraising. And then I'll talk about different options like, should you fundraise from investors? Should you raise debt capital from banks? Should you do crowdfunding? And all of these kind of things that I'm talking about help build credibility, help people understand and see Spring as the expert on the topic of fundraising. We go into things like evaluating if you're ready for fundraising. How should you approach investors? How do you structure your round? How do you decide how much your company is worth? These kind of topics. And then bottom of funnel, now that people have decided that, okay, I want to raise capital, I want to get your support, the idea here is we want to get them familiar with the fundraising process. We want them to understand that fundraising is not something that you do when you're running out of money. You should start planning for fundraising when you actually don't need the money yet, because fundraising will take at least 6 months. You need to build a relationship with investors. You need to eventually convince them that your company is doing well and that they should invest, right? You don't go to an investor when you have 3 months of cash in the bank. So the idea here is you want to familiarize them with the process, generate that sense of urgency. So that's what we're doing with some of the content, what we say in those interviews, the demo days that we have where we have our companies actually share their progress on fundraising and talk about their own journey. We focus on that kind of language. So I'll quickly show you the blog. The blog is just one of those pages, but this is a very comprehensive blog. And do remember, the blog is not the only piece of content we put out. We ran workshops, we had social media posts, we had other micro blogs, but this is what we call a long form blog post. It covers pretty much everything, right? Everything from the topic of understanding if you're ready to raise capital, how to value a company, how to find a good investor, traits of an ideal investor, where to find them, why do investors invest, prerequisite checklist for before you contact an investor, how do you find investors, and then you can see we have different call to actions throughout, where it might be like access the toolkit. And what we are doing with these lead magnets, so this toolkit here, when I know if someone has read the blog post, if they've actually taken the time to download the toolkit, it means that they actually need some of these templates, that they are actively fundraising. So then it means that they're a sales qualified lead, and I will reach out to them and say, hey, are you raising capital? Can I help you? Can I jump on a strategy call with you, right? So this is how I identify if someone's ready to move on to the next stage. So that's one example of how you can use gradualization to create and craft copy and convert people along the funnel. So I'm going to show you a quick template before we move on to case studies. And this is a template that I created based on the framework that HubSpot has. Oops, not this one. So I call it the sales and marketing map. And the idea over here is that when you think about converting your customers, most marketing programs will talk about the funnel. But you have to realize that not everyone goes through the entire gradualization process through you. Some people come in at different points. They already realize, they already understand some of the basics. Some people maybe come in through a referral. They already trust your company. So people come in at different points. So there is not one single funnel. So what's interesting about this map is it really maps it out against the user journey, and it allows you to create multiple funnels and tie them together. So you can see over here, awareness, consideration, decision, and close. These are the 4 main stages. So awareness is the top of funnel. It's getting them to become aware of the problem. Consideration is getting them to consider solutions. Decision is getting them to see you as a solution. So you only come in at this stage. And then closing is, of course, getting them to actually pay and buy. So an example, I'll walk through a specific example here is, let's say awareness might be, I have a fever, sore throat, I ache all over, right? I'm feeling frustrated. I want to get rid of this pain and discomfort. So that's my pain point. It's usually like, what is type of questions? Like, what is causing this fever? What could cause sore throat? What are symptoms of a flu, of a cold? So people are searching these kind of things. Consideration, it's usually the how to, it's more specific. So now I know I have a flu. How can I treat my flu? How can I boost my immune system? Decision, now that I know that I have a flu, what do I need to consider or know when I'm looking at nutritional supplements, right? How do I select the right supplement for me? How do different supplements compare against each other, right? And then now when I'm closing them, how much does it cost? Are there any adverse effects, guarantees? How soon can I see results? So you can see the logic behind this. You're moving people along the funnel. And then you can use different tools and channels depending on what content is most appropriate. So, on the high level, what is type of questions are best addressed by blogs? You can have maybe some videos even if you want to. If you're getting technical, videos work pretty well. Webinars, workshops, and then in decision-making stage, comparison charts, videos, infographics, and then when you're closing, it's your checkout page, your landing cart, these kind of things. So, and then call to actions are different as well. If people are in the consuming mode, they're trying to understand the problem, it's more about read more, learn more. And then when people are considering different solutions, it might be, download this recipe or guide is a lead magnet. Decision is download, book a consultation session or read our testimonials. And in closing, you can see order a sample, discount code for referrals, things like that. So you can use this map to create your sales and marketing strategy, and then you can create different funnels from it. So this is something I want to quickly show you just to help you understand what some of the things that I'll go through in more detail if you do end up joining one of my programs, that I'll actually walk you through this, because I don't believe in one size fits all. Every company is different. So if you have a product, you have a different customer, you have a different solution, your value proposition is different, and the way that you will convert your customer is different. So I'll work with you on building that. So let's look at some case studies. Case studies over here. Before I dive into it, I want to iterate some high-level things to watch out for. So number one is there's this great company, Storybrand. What they like to talk about is you want to position your customer or whoever you're trying to persuade as the hero. You are not the hero. You are the Yoda. You are the guide, the mentor that helps them achieve the results that they desire, right? So a few key points here is identify the character. Make sure you're using you language, not we language. Who cares how many companies you work with? Talk from the perspective on how you can help them, right? You have this problem, we will help you, right? People buy solutions to internal problems. So there's internal motivators and external motivators. If you try to drive your customer to buy with external urgency, you might say things like early bird pricing, limited spots available, Internal, you want to understand their motivation. If you get them to actually acknowledge and say, we want to make this change by this date, and you hold them accountable to that, they will be more motivated to convert. Conversion, if you're trying to get people to convert, people don't like uncertainty. People want to understand what happens when I click this button. When you book on a call, we jump on a strategy session with you. From there, we give you a plan. From there, you decide if you want to join our program. That's an example. So what is the step-by-step in terms of getting to working with you? Common mistakes, vague headlines where it's not clear who the customer is or what you offer. You don't have a strong call to action. Is it book a time with you? Is it download a guide? Is it view this article? Like I mentioned, talking too much about yourself instead of focusing on the customer, and having too many value propositions or trying to offer too much. So these are some things to watch out for. So this is kind of the main high level that I use when I look at any copy, be it email or website. I need to know who you serve, what you do, and how I can get in touch with you. Okay, let's take a look at this website. I'll give you a few moments to analyze it. I want you to focus more on the copy, some of those elements of psychology that I talked about, less on the design elements of it. So take a look, think about what changes you would make and how you would revise the website, and then I'll go into my own analysis of it. Great, so maybe I'll point out some of the obvious ones that I see. So one, too many call to actions. You can see schedule a free home estimate, have questions, call us, see how, schedule a home estimate. So too many different things to do. The best practice for any landing page is that you should have a one-to-one attention ratio. So what that means is there should only be one thing that people can click on and go to when they are on your landing page. Of course, it might be different for a website because you might have a whole bunch of other things that you want people to see. But try to minimize some of these extra things like social media icons, remove those because once people click away, they're not likely to come back. They might forget to come back. Other things that I noticed with the page, probably good to have more credibility. So some testimonials or some images of basements that they've done. Who is it for is not quite clear, and it's not addressing possible objections. Like, what if I get a cheaper quote? Do you have a warranty? What if you finish my basement and it doesn't turn out the way it's supposed to be, or something breaks down? What if I don't have the money to pay up front because renovation costs are quite expensive, right? So here is an example of the revised website on the right. And this revision was actually done by a friend of mine who runs a marketing company. His name is Paul Lean. You can look him up. It's just paullean.com. But yeah, take a look at the changes. So what he did is on the right side, stack benefits, right? Quite clear. 0 interest financing, free home in-home estimate. If you have an estimate, we will beat it. 2-year warranty, competitive pricing. So he's addressing some of those objections. And then the quote is very clear. So there's one clear call to action, request a quote. And actually, you're getting people to put in their information over there. Validation, right? As featured on House, Homestar, so there's some credibility there. And there are the guarantees. So, if 2-year warranty, our basement includes mold proofing, waterproofing, rain and gas protection. So some of those guarantees included. So it's a lot clearer. And I think the results speak for itself. You can see 62.8% increase in leads. Let's try another one. I want you to get into this practice of really analyzing copy. It's easier to analyze the copy for other companies or other websites rather than your own, because sometimes when you get so married to your own product or service, it's really hard to provide critique. But let's take a look at this one. What do you think? How would you improve it? What would you change? So I'd say some of the obvious ones that stand out to me, for a logo design company, they lack graphics. So kind of looks a bit terrible. But one of the main ones is you notice the language. They focus a lot on the we language, right? We make custom design logos. We haven't been in business for 16 years. We have 120 professional designers. We have 1 million logos designed. About us, right? Everything's all about them. Who cares? Make it about your customer. What's the value proposition for your customer? How are you different from any other logo design company? There's no clear call to action. What do you want me to do here? There's actually one, if you look closely enough, it says order now, but the call to action is in blue and it really blends in with the rest of the background. That doesn't make sense. There's no credibility. They talk about the number of logos designed, but they don't include any customers, any sample designs. And of course, it's not addressing any objections. Like, what if I don't like my design? And so on and so forth. So let's take a look at the revised one. So the revised one on the right, in my opinion, not my favorite design, but you can see results speak for itself. We make custom design logos. So it still starts with the we, but I think it's okay to keep the we there because it makes their actual product offering very clear. It's clear that they offer custom design logos, but they very quickly transition to that makes your brand memorable. And that piece is key because that's the value proposition. They don't just focus on any logo, but it's logos that will make your brand memorable. They address objections, right? This is the price, 100% money back guarantee, unlimited revisions, free copyright transfer. So if people are wondering like all of these questions, then they're basically answering it for them. Some credibility points, you can see 100% guarantee. They use a stamp like that, bestseller package. So some of these things can be pretty simple, like stock images that you use, but they help add to the credibility of your company and your website. They use scarcity. You can see that they say 50% off till 31st of May. It is a bit salesy, but I think the results speak for itself. So 192% increase in leads. I mean, maybe the first website was just so terrible anyways. Let's take a look at a few others. So maybe I'll just go through some of these. So you can see the one on the left, too much text, too many different call to actions. They do make a pretty decent use of you language, but they don't add any credibility points there. So they don't talk about some cases or where they're featured on. And they're not addressing to objections. What if I can't travel to you if I'm injured? I'm worried about cost. What if I can't win my case? And you can see on the right, they're addressing those objections, right? We will come to you if you're injured. You don't pay anything unless we win. So it's really addressing those cost kind of pieces. And then you can see the testimonials on the bottom are more like media features. So featured on some of their interviews, it really highlights the credibility. And call to action is a lot cleaner as well. So you can see get a quote, get help, call us. So it's a lot clearer. This one is another example. You can see on the left, detox is the foundation of recovery. What does that mean, right? That's what I mentioned by a vague headline. You can see the one on the right, get rid of your addiction forever. It's a lot clearer what exactly you provide as a service. There's good use of the you language. On the left, they do use credibility pretty well. You can see they have those featured on accreditations, but they're not addressing common objections, right? What if people are worried about confidentiality, since addiction is a sensitive topic? You can see on the right side, we will check your insurance coverage, confidential chat. So they're actually addressing some of those objections. Call to action is also a lot clearer. There's a request a callback here. It's not get medical assistance. Like what exactly is get medical assistance? It's not clear what will happen next. One quick tip to share in terms of improving conversion is I mentioned like you don't have to try to convert everyone on one single page or interaction. And this goes for landing pages as well. So landing pages, you can see that on the right side, just by having a single button without any fields to fill in, you actually have much higher conversion. So what you can do is you can have a button that says sign up, and then they click on the button and then a pop-up comes up that gets them to fill out their info. And if you do it that way, you will actually increase your conversion as well. So then you can also include more information in that pop-up screen if you need to, or sometimes more info after they actually hit the sign up button and then it tells them what to do next, right? So don't try to cram everything all into one page. Don't try to do it all in one interaction. So I'm going to skip over the exercise. What I normally do with the exercise is I actually dive into some examples and actually do a live teardown. But since this is a pre-recorded webinar, we don't actually have a live teardown to do. But this is the copy checklist that I mentioned. So you can take a screenshot of this, save it, or shoot me an email and I can send you a Excel version of this checklist that I have. And yeah, it basically has all the main points that I talked about. So number one, call out your customer, make sure you're using their language, make them feel special in some way. Remember, like I mentioned, a part of a movement, a cause, a community. What are their pains, right? Is it clear? What's the so what test? Why do I care if I'm the customer? Are you speaking to my pain? What's the big promise? What are you offering to change for them? How are you making an improvement for them? Expanding on desire. So this is more painting a clearer picture, making sure you're using visuals that match. Specific solutions. Is your offer clear, right? Backing it up. That's social proofing, credibility points, media coverage, things like that. Uncovering objections. Are you addressing all of their questions? What are some common questions that your customers have as they consider your solution? And then making it impossible to say no. So on the other side of it, are you giving them something to say yes to, right? So are you actually including guarantees, reducing risk? And then is there something clear for them to say yes to? Is there an element of scarcity? And then the U test is the copy more about you or more about them. So if you have all of those elements, you should have a good landing page, or whatever you're trying to do, email, LinkedIn outreach, all of those apply as well. So let's take this out of a business context and use it in a more personal example. So let's say if you were to try to invite a friend to go hiking, most people, when they create events on Facebook, all they do is they just create a Facebook event and invite people to it. And they notice that some people tend to find that a lot of other events get more registrations that people actually RSVP to attend, but their events don't actually get as many registrations. So if you want to do this as an experiment, take a look and analyze the copy of good events to see if you can find all of these elements as well. And I'm sure that you will find most of them. So let's take a look at this example here. So I talked about some additional elements in the copy checklist. I talked about making a big promise and expanding on desire. So let's take a look here. Hiking, right? The big promise is let's go on an adventure. It's not just hiking. Hiking is kind of boring. Like, let's go on an adventure. You've been sitting in the office all day. Let's go out, breathe some fresh air, see some great sights. So you're honing in on all the different senses. And this is what I mean by painting a clearer picture, expanding on the desired. You want to show them, use imagery, show them images of the places that you plan on hiking. You want to use social proofing, right? You can say John, Amy, Adam are coming as well. People from around the world come to Vancouver just to visit Whistler and Garibaldi to hike. And then addressing objections. I'll drive. Don't worry about the logistics, the food, the planning. We only get scarcity. We only get 3 months of amazing weather. And then again, scarcity. Let me know by this Friday. We only have 2 seats left in the car. So all of these points really kind of speak to all of those elements that we just talked about, right? So there's scarcity. There is social proofing. You're painting a clearer picture. You're expanding on desire. You're making a big promise. So if you do this well, you should be able to write more persuasive content, whether or not it's for business or for personal. So I just want to summarize all of the key points that we went through. So number one, call out your customer. Make it clear who is it for. Number two, make them feel special. Create a movement, polarize, identify a common enemy. Use pain strategically. Pain versus pleasure. Remember, pain is more relatable. Number four, reduce, remove, and reverse risk if possible. Number five, gradualization. So try to slowly escalate the conversation. Number six, social proof. How can you back it up? Number seven, address objections before they arise. So how can you address some of the things that are commonly raised as concerns before your customer even has to get to them? So yep, I will skip over the upcoming workshops because depending on when you're watching this webinar, they might be different. But if you're interested in working more with me, I am open to one-on-one consulting. If you're interested in that, send me an email and then we can discuss your business and your needs. Pricing really depends. Like, it really depends on where you are at. what kind of solutions you need and how long you need me to work with you. I am running a sales training program. This is more for entrepreneurs and early sales hires. And it's really designed for you if you are unfamiliar with sales, unfamiliar with business, and you want to get into a deeper dive into some of these topics that I just covered. So it's a Startup Sales Academy. The reason why I say it's for startups or more for founders is because I actually go a lot into strategy. And if you work for corporate, there are certain things that you don't have the flexibility to control. Like you can't change the pricing of your products, or you can't change the add-ons that you offer. But if you're a startup founder or if you're an early sales hire, you often have the chance to actually work with decision makers to actually make some of these changes. So here's what I'll cover in the program. It is more for B2B products. B2C is more for marketing. And I would recommend that you focus more on sales if you have if your customer lifetime value is at least $3,000. If your customer lifetime value is less than $3,000, you are probably going to be more of a marketing-centric company. So what I cover in the program is I include sales fundamentals, talking a bit more about how to do customer discovery, how to understand buyer psychology, decision-making. We go into growth engines, revenue models. We talk about how to create sales experiments, how to measure things, pricing, how to price appropriately, how to adjust your pricing. We go into sales strategy. So how do you build that user journey map? How do you build funnels, tools and automation? How do you prospect? How do you find the right contact at a company? How do you find your email? Sales goals and metrics, hiring salespeople. And then we go into sales techniques as well. So some of the copywriting stuff we talked about. We go more into how to build rapport, how to build trust, how to overcome objections, how to close a customer, how to negotiate, things like that. So it is a pretty comprehensive program. It's actually a full 1 month long program. And I'll include a whole bunch of templates, tools, and checklists that includes like the copywriting checklist you saw, but also the sales strategy template, sales marketing map, all of these kind of things are all included. And it runs usually on Tuesday, Thursdays, 5 to 7 p.m. PST. So there's about 4 hours a week for content and then about 2 hours more for assignments. So it is quite intensive. I would say this is a program that is really good for you if you are just starting out. And if you really need to get a good understanding of sales and everything that's revenue related. So yeah, that's pretty much one of the ways that you can work with me. Feel free to shoot me an email. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. And if you have any questions, here's my contact info again as well. And that is it for this workshop. I hope to see you for some of the future workshops. All right.